Good evening, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. President Biden is going to be speaking live from the White House in 57 minutes and 30 seconds on today's Supreme Court presidential immunity ruling. This is new. This was not scheduled way in advance. It just came out that he is going to speak from the White House. Are they doing this to try to make up for the debate? That's just a personal thought I have. I would not be surprised if they're like, hey, let's have him make an appearance. So I don't, if the debate hadn't happened, would he have spoken on this? Maybe he would. Maybe he would. I have no idea. Regardless, President Biden will be speaking from the White House in 56 minutes and 45 seconds on this Supreme Court immunity ruling that happened today. So we are going to bring you live coverage of this. We're going to have President Biden live. Look, I can show you. There it is. 56 minutes and 31 seconds. It's a couple seconds off from, the timers are a couple seconds off, but you see the thing. We're going to talk about the ruling shortly. I would have come on earlier today and I would have come on earlier today and done a stream on the ruling, but there was an internet outage in the studio, which fortunately got fixed today. So I was dealing with that all day, but it got fixed and we're back in the studio, which is good. So sorry I wasn't able to get on the air earlier, but everything is fine with the internet, hopefully. It seems fine for right now. So there it is. He's going to be speaking in 55 minutes. The Supreme Court gave a ruling on whether presidents could be charged with federal crimes. And specifically, it's a ruling that pertained to the 2020 election trial of President Trump, former President Trump, charging that he tried to overthrow the election. There's no way I'm going to be able to. It's a complex ruling, and I'm not a lawyer. So we can talk about it in general terms, the ruling, but I'm not even going to try to do any kind of detailed legal analysis because it's too complex and I don't have the background for it. But basically, the ruling said that presidents can't be charged when they're carrying out the core duties of their office. They can be charged when they're carrying out for things they do when they're behaving privately, and if they're doing stuff that has to do with their presidential office, but it's not a core duty of the office, then it's unclear. And then there was also an important part of this ruling where they said, well, if you're going to charge a president with something, you can't use evidence gained from anything he did while carrying out the core duties of his office. See, I told you it was complex. So, but basically, it's a rule. I would say the general take on the ruling is people were generally surprised that it seemed to give presidents more immunity from being prosecuted for federal crimes than a lot of people thought it would. And specifically, it seemed to possibly leave open that presidents could do things which seem like crimes, but if they do it and they make it look like they're doing it as part of a presidential duty, then they can't get prosecuted for it. I know that sounds kind of, I'm just trying to give you a basic overview here. But again, there's just no way I can even attempt to give you a thorough reading of this. There's a lot of debate among legal scholars about what the ramifications of this ruling are. So I'm just trying to give you a general outline of what it's about and what it means. Anyways, the president is going to speak on this. I don't even know what he's going to say. Is he going to say, because he's president, but is he going to say, because, so I will say this, there are a number of legal analysts out there who were critical of the ruling because they think basically it gives a president too much ability to commit crimes and not get charged for them. But there is some debate about this, and it's about all presidents. It applies to Democratic presidents or Republican presidents. I mean, of course, it does apply to former President Trump because he's charged with doing things while he was president. But, it's not just about former President Trump. So I don't know what the take is going to be. What is his take going to be? I don't think he's going to come out and say like, wow, this Supreme Court is horrible. I can't believe they did this. Maybe he will. I'd be surprised if he did that, but maybe he will. Because again, they're not just ruling on Trump, they're ruling on all presidents. So, I think a lot of Americans probably don't really, it's very hard to understand the ruling. It's a complex ruling. So I would be surprised if he came out and said like, oh, this is just a horrible Supreme Court. One of our viewers said they thought he would say that. And look, and the three justices, the three left, as they say, liberal justices who voted, was it Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson? Am I getting this right? Am I even getting the names right, or am I just forgetting things? I hope I'm getting them right. I have the ruling in front of me, yes. So in the response, I'm losing my mind. It's not the objection, and it's not the ruling, it's not the rebuttal. What is the word I'm trying to think of? To the ruling. Not the concurring opinion, the dissent. In the dissent that was written by Justice Sotomayor, and which all three justices, Kagan, Jackson, and Sotomayor, signed on to, Justice Sotomayor was very critical of this ruling and basically said it would open up things so that the president could commit all kinds of crimes and not get prosecuted for them. So, but again, like, I don't know that a lot of the country has a great grasp on this ruling. It's not like a simple thing like you can say like, oh, X is, they overturned Roe versus Wade or something like that, or the death penalty is now legal or illegal or that kind of thing. So, maybe he'll come out and say and trash the Supreme Court. Maybe. If I would think he's going to take some strong view. I guess here's what I'm trying to think this through. But like, maybe my thought is this. You can tell me what you think. Maybe my thought is this. I know that a lot of people who follow the news and follow politics really are invested in this ruling and have strong feelings about it. And I know it's an important ruling. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think among the general public, everybody's sitting around the water cooler today talking about the Supreme Court presidential immunity ruling. So to me, if he's going to speak on a Supreme Court ruling like this, usually it would be something like Roe versus Wade, some kind of thing that like everybody's talking about it. So some people say they are. I disagree with you. Maybe you are. And look, I can say right now, when I came on the air right now, something a bunch of people were saying in the chat is, what's the ruling? If I'm coming on the air to cover a Supreme Court ruling that happened in the morning that the president is speaking on, people aren't saying to me in the chat, what was the ruling? So again, it's interesting to me that he's speaking on this, because usually he would speak on something that like is just the entire country is talking about. So it's, look, my theory, take it or leave it, My theory is that part of him speaking tonight, perhaps a big part, is them saying, boy, that debate went horribly. We got to get him out there. Hey, look, this ruling happened. Hey, here's a chance to have him come out and make a national speech. And people can see him in a better light than they did a few days ago. That's a thought I have. I might be wrong about that, but I'm just throwing it out there. And I know a lot, you cannot agree with me. That's fine. I'm not saying I know for sure, but especially when this wasn't planned. This wasn't on the schedule. This just got scheduled. There were reporters saying this wasn't scheduled. They just announced he was speaking. So, anyways. That's just a thought. It's interesting. I wasn't sitting around all day saying, boy, I'm sure the president's going to speak about this. Roe versus Wade happens, the Roe versus Wade decision. Oh, I think he's going to speak on that. There's some big terrorist attack or something. I'm like, well, the president's going to speak on that. I wasn't sitting around all day saying I'm waiting for the president to speak on the immunity ruling. Also, well, I don't, it's an ongoing. Has he really been speaking that much about like the Trump trials? I feel like he hasn't been speaking that much about the Trump trials. He's kind of been letting it play out in the court system. So again, this ruling was a ruling pertaining to the Trump 2020 election trial, even though it has ramifications for all future presidents. Anyways. Just some. So it's just interesting to me that he's speaking on this. And I guess if, I don't know the take he's going to say. Is he just going to basically say what Justice Sotomayor says and say this is like a horrible decision? Also, for those of you who think he's going to come out and say it's a horrible decision, whatever he thinks of the decision and whatever you think of the decision, as a president, you would, in theory, there's an argument to be said as a president, you don't want to undermine the authority of the Supreme Court if it's not absolutely necessary. Because, whether or not you agree with the Supreme Court, you want Americans to have faith in the Supreme Court. So if he just comes out and trashes the Supreme Court, there's a cost, in theory, a cost to the country for that. But maybe he's going to do that. But if he's not going to come out and take some strong opinion, I don't know why he's speaking. Like, does America need to be calmed down right now? Does he need to come out and say, everyone, look, let's relax. Let's take a breather. I don't think he does. I don't see anybody rioting about this or anything like that. So again, I'm just trying to work through mentally, why is he doing this? What is he going to say? But I don't know that there was a compelling need for him to come out and say something. Anyways, I'm going to check the comments as well, and we'll see what happens. You're a moron thinks he's doing it as part of as a response to like what happened in the debate a couple days ago. Samsky says it's going to be a salty speech. Let's see. He thinks, Join the Third says he's definitely going to trash the Republican-nominated Supreme Court. David Watson thinks him speaking tonight is damage control from the debate. Hey, a quick thanks to Grevin Share for your support, and also FF. FF says, seems like panic mode activated after the debate. Thank you, Robin, for your support. And Robin's Dogs, thank you, Root Seller. Thank you to our member, Victoria Neeson. Hey, let me thank our moderators who are in the chat. Hey, 43 minutes he's speaking. Thanks to Hambone, our new member, by the way. Thanks to Ruth Krafasi, who's moderating. AJ for moderating. Thank you, AJ. Linda Belk and Larry moderate for us on X. Danny James is moderating too. We also have... Hang on a moment. I want to thank our other moderators here. David Green, Good Luck Duck, LB Prairie Dawn, McBritches, Sarah Papa Bear, and Surly Dev over there on Twitch. And thanks so much, Amalian on Twitch, and Jackson22 on Twitch, and McBritches on Twitch for your support. And then we have over there on Facebook modding, thank you. By the way, I'm also going to check and see if there's any updates on this whole thing. I mean, this just came out right before we came on the air. They suddenly announced he's speaking on this. Is he going to speak for a minute or two? Is he just going to come out for a minute or two and that's it? Or is he going to say something a little longer? I don't know. Paula Thompson says he is speaking because he needs to speak about this. The country needs to know what it can mean. Thanks to Margaret Riley for moderating. Kay Lowry Body. And all of our other moderators, thank you. And thanks to Mr. Kenneth. Mr. Kenneth AHJJ. Thanks, Mr. Kenneth, for your support as well. And also Wellen Dowd. Thank you. Hey, you hear that name? He created a funny name. Thank you. Funny. A funny name. Okay, so I want to go over again. Let's really quick go over the ruling. And again, I am not going to try to give you a detailed summary of this ruling. It's complex. There's a lot of legal debate over exactly what it means. But I can tell you the basic idea. All right, we want to do this. There's the ruling right here. I'm not even going to really read over it. I might read a couple of little passages from the dissent. There it is right there. So the basic idea of this ruling is Trump is charged. One of the trials he's facing is he's faced with federal charges for trying to overturn the 2020 election and various things he did to try to do that. And Trump's team, his legal team, was arguing that he is immune because he was president and that these things he's charged for, he can't actually be charged for because he's the president. And so that behavior as president, you can't get charged for it. And so this ruling was the Supreme Court talking about what can presidents be charged for, or what do they have immunity for when they do stuff in office. They're specifically talking about President Trump, but they're making a ruling about presidential immunity that applies to all presidents. So what they said basically, and again, I'm not a legal expert, but the idea is they said, if I'm understanding this right, they said when a president is performing the core functions of his office, like issuing pardons is one of them, but there's certain basic things a president does according to the Constitution. When he is performing his core functions of his office, the stuff he does when doing that, he can't be criminally charged for stuff he does when carrying out the core functions of his office. When he's doing private behavior, so for example, if a president was going to walk down the street and just go into a bank and rob a bank, that's not him doing something having to do with being president. He's just doing that on his own time. He can get charged for that. That's private behavior. And then there's other things a president might do as president which have to do with him being president, but they're not core functions. And you might ask, like, what is a core function and all these specifics? I'm not going to get into that. I don't even understand all this stuff. But they said, basically, it depends that it's possible he can be charged, but there's a presumption of immunity for those functions. There's a presumption of immunity when he's carrying out things relating to his office that are not core functions. I believe I have that right. That basic outline. But I apologize if I got things wrong. But basically, as a result of this ruling, some of the things President Trump has been charged with in the 2020 election case, those charges are going to go away, according to this ruling. Some of the other things he's been charged with, he might possibly still be charged for, but now it goes back to Judge Chutkan, who's a federal judge, and there's got to be a determination whether these things he was doing like talking to state officials and giving a speech and this kind of stuff. Was that part of him carrying out the duties of president, or is that considered private behavior? And there's things like it needs to be decided whether it was official or private behavior. So there's ramifications on his trial coming up, and basically this trial is never now going to take place. The Jack Smith 2020 election trial with Judge Chutkin about charging him with crimes for attempting to overthrow the election, that's not taking place before the election. If he wins the election, he'll tell his Justice Department probably to not prosecute him on it and make it go away. But that's not going to happen before the election. So there's the question of the impact of these charges on his trial, right? But there's another thing, the impact of this decision on his trial. But there's a whole other aspect of this, is that what does this decision allow future presidents to do and not get charged with a crime for doing? That's not about, Trump, whether Trump can be charged for stuff he did in 2020. That's about what every president in the future can be charged with. Is the president above the law or not above the law? And there are some people, including the liberal justices on the court, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson, who think that this ruling will basically will allow the president in the future to do all kinds of criminal things and not get charged for crimes and be beyond the law. So as an example here, if I go to the dissent, if I can find the dissent, here's Justice Sotomayor's dissent with Kagan and Jackson. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole dissent, but just to give you a sense of what they think. Today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. And I should say it's about former presidents. I believe the Justice Department has like a rule where they don't charge presidents who are currently in power. So that is something I should have said. It's about whether former presidents can be charged with things they did while they were president. So just to show you some of the tone of what the dissent was from the liberal justices, they wrote, today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. It makes a mockery of the principle, foundation to our Constitution and system of government, that no man is above the law. Relying on little more than its own misguided wisdom about the need for bold and unhesitating action by the president, the court gives former President Trump all the immunity he asked for and more. Because our Constitution does not shield a former president from answering for criminal and treasonous acts, I dissent. And let me just show you a striking passage here from Justice Sotomayor. And again, this was signed on to by the two other liberal justices, Kagan and Jackson. You can see here it says, I have to find this part here. Here, look. Looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's Supreme Court decision are stark. This is the liberal justice dissent from the ruling. It was a 6-3 ruling. The court, they say, effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. This new official acts immunity, immunity for acts you do in your official capacity as president, this new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning today, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. The president orders Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. The president organizes a coup to hold on to power, immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune, 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 immune. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends, because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That is the majority's message today. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably, and every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. So, anyways, that's a sense of the liberal justices, the three liberal justices, their dissent. Now, not every legal scholar agrees that this is the result of the ruling, is that this what the ruling means today. So there's debate about this. And I believe Justice Roberts, didn't Justice Roberts reply to the dissent? Hold on a second here. Let me go down here and see if I can find it. I thought he did, but I can't find it here. Anyways, so let me just do a quick check here. But my point is that there are different opinions about this ruling and what it means for presidential immunity and just how much immunity it gives future presidents to do things while in office and not get criminally charged for them after. And so, you could see how just the liberal justices think about this. Is President Biden going to come out and basically say the same thing as Justice Sotomayor said that I was just reading you in her dissent, in the dissent she wrote, or not? I don't know. And again, I am not a legal scholar, and I am not an expert on this ruling. I'm not going to try to get into the details. I was just trying to give you like a general outline of the whole thing, so you have a basic idea of what it deals with. Oh, I'll actually post the ruling, in the dissent, and it's 119 pages long. But I'll post a link to the ruling. Hang on a second here. Here, I have it right here. So, I don't even know. I can't say with my lack of legal expertise, and I just posted the ruling in the chat, by the way, that you can open it up for yourself. The ruling and the dissent and the different opinions. But I honestly don't know if that's true what Justice Sotomayor said. In all those cases, she said, is it true that the president could not get charged? I don't know. So I don't want to start opining on legal stuff I know nothing about. But trying to give you a sense of the debate here. By the way, thanks to Rita and Grevin Share. Rita says, rescind Nixon's pardon. Apparently he didn't need one. Thank you, Rita and Grevin Share, for your support. And let me just real quick here do something else. I want to take some more of your comments too. Yes, and again, the ruling said that. Actually, I should show you what Justice Roberts said in the ruling. Oops. Here, right here. You can see here. Held under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority, and he is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. There is no immunity for his private unofficial acts. Something I have a question about, and I just don't understand it, is if you're president and you, let's say you want to make a lot of money for yourself, and you say, I don't know if this is a good example. Let's take an easier one. Let's say if you're president, let's say somebody's going to run against you for president. if you go to your like Justice Department or the military or something, and you say, "Hey, this person's a threat. I think this person is a threat to the country. They should be locked up. So go lock this person up." So it would like keep the person from running against them. And you really just did that because you were worried about the person running against you. And so is that like even like can you just is that now something you cannot be charged with a crime for? Or like if you wanted to make some money and you said like, "Hey, Justice Department, I think this money in some federal vault is not safe. Go put it in my house or something." Like, as long as you're like pretending to do something official, can you do anything you want? I don't know. Maybe the answer is no. Maybe the answer is, well, you're not really doing an official act. Then I don't know. These are the questions I have. I have no idea what the answer is. But I think the worry here is that somebody who is president could want to do something wrong and something illegal, but they just do it by playing pretend and acting like they're carrying out official business. And then they can just say, "Oh, I was carrying out official business, so I have immunity." But I don't know. I don't know the specifics here. I'm not a lawyer. So I don't know. But if you say somebody, if there's a, where's the core functions thing here? Can I find this here? Yes. They say this is the majority ruling. This case is the first criminal prosecution in our nation's history of a former president for actions taken during his presidency. Determining whether and under what circumstances such a prosecution may proceed requires careful assessment of the scope of presidential power under the Constitution. The nature of that power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office. At least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers, this immunity must be absolute. As for his remaining official actions, he is entitled to at least presumptive immunity. So, the worries here you see are worries that this ruling could allow presidents to do bad stuff, and just because they're doing it or pretending to do it as an official action, can't prosecute it no matter what they do. So I'm not going to assess this as legally because I'm not a legal expert. But I'm just trying to give you a general sense of what this is about because I know it's really complex for people. And some of you might understand it way better than I do, and that's fine. But I'm just trying to give people out there a general sense of what this is about. So anyways, in the general idea, it's about what a president can be prosecuted for. I think actually probably applies to both federal and state, I would think. But what a president can be prosecuted for when he does stuff while he's in office. And does he have immunity from certain things, which is you can't be charged for it no matter what. And that's what this case is about. And it specifically applies to Trump, but it's going to apply to all future presidents as well, and past presidents, by the way. Okay, so President Biden is going to speak about this coming up in 23 minutes and 52 seconds. I'm going to take some comments from you guys. I just wanted to kind of go through that a little bit. And again, I'm sorry I'm not more of an expert on this. And I'm sure I said some things a bit wrong, but hopefully you get the basic idea. And you would think, I guess, if you had to bet, the most likely thing Biden would say is he would come out and he would side with the liberal justices and basically say, this gives presidents too much power to commit crimes and then not get prosecuted for them. However, if Biden's going to say something like that, is he going to say it about presidents, or will he say it about Trump? Will he say this will let Trump do all this stuff if he gets back in office? And that's why you got to vote for me? Although that would be speaking at the White House and giving a campaign speech, which I think is kind of frowned upon, because he is speaking from the White House. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know exactly what he's going to say. And let me reiterate, I'm sorry to keep saying this. Personally, I think a big part of him speaking tonight is, hey, we got to get this guy out in front of the public because the debates went so poorly. So, oh, this ruling happened today. What a great opportunity to get him out there. Let's get him out there and have him say something. That's just my personal belief. Okay, anyways. All right, I want to take some comments from you guys. Again, I'm sorry to go on and on and on, but I think it's important to kind of get the basics. And I'll post a link to the ruling again in the chat, so you can look at it yourself. It's a lot of stuff to look at. Okay, hang on. I haven't even checked the news while we've been talking either. Got to do that. Make sure nothing came out about this the last couple minutes. Not seeing anything. 21 minutes if it starts on time. Joe Van thinks he will be late. Dean R. White says, can you show the relevant parts of the Constitution? No, because I don't know the ruling well enough to know what they even are. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get into detailed legal arguments because I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'll just say stuff that's wrong. Buddha Rolo writes in and says, you are a fool if you don't think this sets up a president to be a king. So I guess that because I'm not a legal expert and I can't read this ruling and know exactly what it means, and I don't know, among different legal experts saying one thing or another, how to decide between them. I guess according to Buddha Rolio, I am a fool. Well, thank you for letting me know that. I appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know that, Buddha. I appreciate that. Thomas says he could be stepping aside. No. He is speaking on the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. That is literally what the White House has said. I cannot imagine if he was speaking about something else, they would post that he's speaking about the Supreme Court immunity ruling. RLF Captures Our Viewer says, I feel like he will speak on the danger to democracy this ruling poses. Now, if he comes out there and trashes the ruling, that's a big deal in that you have the president coming out and basically undermining the authority of the Supreme Court. I'm not telling you what to think about that. I'm just telling you it is a very big deal if the president, after the Supreme Court makes a ruling, comes out and just trashes the ruling. Let's see here. Joe McCurdy writes in, the U.S. government is based on checks and balances. Branches are created to make sure the branches don't misbehave. The SCOTUS gave presidents king-like immunity to commit any crime under the guise of the office democracy is on the line. That's what Joe says. Reclusive Observer, our viewer, thinks they want Biden to speak to show the nation he is fine after the debate. Brandon Johnson says, maybe he will make it clear to the people that this ruling today means if Trump gets into power, he can throw his cases out and there will never be a way to hold him accountable. Just my thought. They will need a way to galvanize voters. If not tonight, then campaign on it. Now, I don't think nothing about this ruling, I think, impacts whether Trump can make the cases go away if he's in power. Because he has the ability to, first of all, tell the Justice Department when he's in power to just not pursue cases. It has never been tested in court, but he could try to pardon himself for various things too. But Brandon, you might be right. Maybe he will focus on this case and say that it makes Trump more dangerous. Although it gets a bit funky, because as I understand it, when you're on White House grounds and you're acting as president, you're not supposed to make campaign speeches. Because I remember when Trump used to do stuff that could be construed as campaign speeches, or others, I believe, in his administration, sometimes people would complain, hey, wait, they're not supposed to be doing that at the White House. So I might be wrong about this, but I think when you're at the White House and you're speaking at as president at the White House and not at like some campaign function, you're not supposed to be campaigning. But so I don't think that's illegal. I think it's like I think it's like a tradition, but I might be wrong. But the idea would be is that it's, you're serving the public pays for the White House, and you're using public resources to do this. Anyways, so, but that I'm not an expert on either, but I remember that being, I've seen that being discussed when presidents speak at the White House, and when they have events there. Kerry Takahashi says, do Democrats know Biden answered all questions but looked horrible? The other guys completely incapable of caring that Trump didn't answer questions but looked good failing. That's what Kerry Takahashi says. The student handicap says, from the UK, so don't know if this is a normal thing for your president to speak on. What on earth is his campaign team doing? Look, as I said, I didn't sit around all day thinking he was going to speak on this. I think that people who follow the news are into this ruling. I think a lot of Americans don't really know what this ruling means, have not been so tightly following it. I don't think every American has been sitting around, the average American has been sitting around wringing their hands today or running around talking to all their friends about this, about the incredible, impactful Supreme Court presidential immunity ruling. To me, presidents normally speak on rulings that more of the country is like all following, like Roe versus Wade or something, or will have a huge impact on, direct impact on the lives of a lot of people. This could have impact through the presidency, but so I wasn't sitting around all day saying, oh, he's definitely going to speak on this, and it's interesting to me that he is. And this wasn't even planned. I mean, it just came out about, an hour and a half ago that he was speaking on this. This was not on the schedule. So there's certain things presidents are going to speak on. I wasn't sure he was going to speak on this. And I will say this. I follow the news. I follow a lot of reporters and stuff. I don't recall seeing a single reporter or commentator today say, whoa, I haven't seen Biden schedule a speech on this yet today. Is he really not going to speak on this? I have not heard a single person on TV, in print, who I follow on Twitter, X. I have not heard a single commentator say, whoa, is he really not going to speak on this? So I certainly don't think it was a slam dunk that he was definitely going to speak on it today. Nan B says she was waiting all day. Maybe some of you were, but I don't think it was a slam dunk that it would be spoken on. 14 minutes and 30 seconds. 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And there's all kinds of interesting aspects to the case, and what exact impact it has on the 2020 election trial, and which things he is now immune from or might be immune from, which charges might have to be thrown out. Not going to get into the specifics. Don't know them. Don't understand them well enough. It gets very detailed and complicated. There's a bunch of articles out there. So for now, just focusing on President Biden speaking on this. But just know it's a ruling which has given the president more immunity than was previously thought a president have to do things in office and not get charged for them after. Anything the president does in his official capacity in office, when carrying out the core functions of the office, he is immune from getting prosecuted for after he is president. And any other official acts that aren't part of the core functions of the office, there is a presumed immunity. And then he can still be prosecuted in the regular way without presumption of immunity for things he does in a private capacity. But what exactly that all means in practical terms, I can't tell you. And just to show you again what the three liberal justices on the court, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, said today in Sotomayor's dissent. Just to give you a sense of what President Biden might talk about if he takes the liberal justice line on this. This is the dissent. Oops, this is dissent right. Where is it here? I need to go right here. Just going to read you a couple paragraphs here. This is the dissent from Justice Sotomayor, with whom Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson joined dissenting. This says, today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. It makes a mockery of the principle foundational to our Constitution and system of government that no man is above the law, relying on little more than its own misguided wisdom about the need for bold and unhesitating action by the president. The court gives former President Trump all the immunity he asked for and more because our Constitution does not shield a former president from answering for criminal and treasonous acts. I dissent. And also, if you go down here, she writes, down here, she says, looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. This new official acts immunity, that's immunity for a president for acts that a president does in his official capacity as president, basically. This new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning in this ruling today, she says, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune. Immune, immune, immune. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. Because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That is the majority's message today. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, she says, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. And then she also says, never in the history of our republic has a president had reason to believe that he would be immune from criminal prosecution if he used the trappings of his office to violate the criminal law. Moving forward, however, all former presidents will be cloaked in such immunity. If the occupant of that office misuses official power for personal gain, the criminal law that the rest of us must abide by will not provide a backstop. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. And she left out the word respectfully, which normally would be said in a dissent. Anyways, I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I don't know if that's true, that a president could do all these things and can't get charged for doing any of those things, like she said, because I'm not a legal expert. But that is what the dissent was today. So maybe President Biden is going to say something like that. We'll have to see. But just to give you a sense of what you might hear from President Biden, I wanted to mention that. Right. She is a legal expert. I know. But so are the 6 justices that voted for this ruling. They're also legal experts. So just because somebody is a legal expert doesn't mean every legal expert is right about this, because legal experts disagree about this. Okay. No, I'm not going to get into the ruling right now. We have 8 minutes left. I'm not a legal scholar. We're not doing textual analysis of a ruling when I have no expertise to do so. We're going to wait and see what President Biden says, and we're going to take your comments about this. Let's see here. What do you what do you think Biden is going to do when he comes out and speaks? Oh, hold on. It says we will begin shortly. Look, we will begin shortly. Guys, we will begin shortly. There you go. Is he going to trash the ruling? Palma thinks he will be angry. Yes, it's going to be live. We're going to carry it live right now. This is the White House stream. We're carrying it live. John DeBoard says, so Nixon could have gotten away with what he did wild. See, that is something I don't know about. I don't know. Hey, thanks, Grevin Scherer. Grevin Scherer thinks Sotomayor is writing in dramatic hyperbole. Thanks, Grevin Scherer. Thanks, by the way, to XToFreeX, who says, what's to stop overreach unabated? Order now, new justices appointed, disband the judicial branch, hand everyone free ponies. Obviously joking, but what do you think? Impeachment, we know, is limited. So it sounds like Extra Fee thinks this gives the president too much power. Thank you, Uncle Lester Camp, for your support. Thank you, Dodger Blue 79 and AM Wise for your support. Dodger Blue says you could twist anything to fit that definition of official powers. That's the fear. Thank you, Amwise4. Thank you, Andrew Schlegel, for your support, and Haniel Vargas, and Connie Fernandez, and Joe. What I'd like to do real quick, if I can find it, is I believe Justice Roberts did respond to the dissent. Can I find this here? I couldn't find it in the ruling. There's no table of contents on the ruling, I don't think. It's supposed to happen in about 5 minutes. Oh, yes. Hold on. I think I can find this for you. Quickly. No, I can't. SCOTUS blog said that Justice Roberts said that the dissent written by Sotomayor and a separate dissent by Justice Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson, said, according to SCOTUS blog, Justice Roberts said the dissents struck a chilling tone of doom that is wholly disproportionate to what the court actually does today. He portrayed the ruling as a relatively narrow one that decides only that immunity extends to official discussions between the president and his attorney general, and then remand to the lower courts, blah, 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 blah. So I haven't been able to find that part where Roberts responds to it. But he basically, the Chief Justice said he thought that the dissent went too far in drawing conclusions about about the immunity, the degree of immunity this gave presidents. According to SCOTUS blog. Oh, I got it. I found it. Really quick. Here it is. Here it is. Right here. No, not right there. Right here. This is from the ruling. This is from the ruling. This is page 45. Is this Justice Roberts? I think this is Roberts. Thomas. There's Thomas. Didn't Roberts write the opinion? Oh, no. Anyways, I believe this is Roberts. Yes, Chief Justice Roberts. Okay, I believe this is Roberts. Really quick, we have 3 minutes till Biden speaks, but let me just show you this really quick. You can see I believe this is Justice Roberts saying, as for the dissents to the ruling, they strike a tone of chilling doom that is wholly disproportionate to what the court actually does today. Conclude that immunity extends to official discussions between the president and his attorney general, and then remand to the lower courts to determine in the first instance. He's talking about the specifics about the ruling about the Trump case. So the ruling does respond to the dissent. I'm not getting all into that right now. But it's there. If you want, I'm going to post a link to the ruling. You can read the ruling and all the different opinions. I'm posting a link right now. Here's a link. Go read it yourself if you'd like. I just gave you a link to it. It's free in the chat. You can also find it on the Supreme Court website. Go to opinions. Okay, sorry. All right, guys, we are almost there. President Biden is about to speak on this Supreme Court ruling. Is he going to trash the ruling? Is he going to trash the Supreme Court? How long is he going to speak for? I assume he won't take any questions. He could. I assume he won't. It is live. He's going to speak live at the White House. Oh, I got to put up there live the White House. Let me get that on the screen while we wait for this. Then we'll get your reaction to it after. I'm putting up the label that's the chyron that says live the White House. If I can put it up there. All right, there. Live the White House. Ooh. Here we go. Fine. I did not know he was going to be speaking. Supposedly he's speaking in 1 minute. 1 minute is scheduled for. Will he actually speak in a minute? That I don't know. Thanks to all of our moderators. I really appreciate it, moderators. Thank you so much for being in our chat rooms. Moderators. We are ready for him to speak. No, it's going to be live. It is not pre-recorded. Andrew Schlegel says, would be a baller move if Biden came out and went, I'm immune, so I'm canceling the election now based on my official powers. Hey, thanks, Andrew, for your support. Also, Blue Spider, thank you for your support. We're going to take your comments after he speaks. After he speaks, we'll hear what you had to say. There is somebody right now who an aide just put some kind of folder onto the podium. I can tell you that. So, we're watching the White House feed, and as soon as he comes out there, you will see him, and it'll go to him. Thank you, Seize the Day, who says, Happy Canada Day. Thank you, Seize the Day, for your support. Again, here we go. Here we go right now.
The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law. Not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the President alone. This decision today has continued the Court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the President once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, that defined the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute, and that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. And may God protect our troops.
All right, that was President Biden. We're going to watch that again at some point. It wasn't that long. So look, he was critical of the decision of the Supreme Court ruling today on presidential immunity. He read part of the dissent that we had also talked about, of Justice Sotomayor's dissent. He said it gives presidents too much power. And he also was critical of a number of recent decisions of the Supreme Court. But something else I'll point out is I have to listen to it again. But there was that point in the middle where it was saying like something like the justice system is not going to hold Trump accountable. So like you, the voters, need to hold him accountable, which seemed to me like a campaign speech. I thought you weren't supposed to make campaign speeches when you're speaking from the White House. Now, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I swear, I know in past years I've covered stuff from the White House, and I've heard criticism when it's like, oh, the president or somebody working for the president is making a campaign speech from the White House. So I thought that was interesting. I'll have to see if others, like analysts, comment on that or whatever. But I think you're not really supposed to do the campaign speeches from the White House. But I may be wrong about that. But I mean, it sounded to me like that part of the speech was like telling people to not vote for Trump and vote for him. But I got to listen to the wording again. I got to listen to the wording for you. So, anyways, what did you guys think about it? I'm going to show it again. I'm going to take a couple comments right now, and we're going to replay it. It's only a couple minutes long, so we'll replay it and let you watch it again. I wonder if anybody I'll see if any analysts I follow are talking about that aspect of it. Let's see. Yeah, Binary Hex says new presidential powers. He can do whatever he wants. YT thought it was too little too late. So was this speech at all, at least in part, designed to put Biden out there after the debate, which was widely seen as a really bad performance? That I don't know. Truly Thankful said he slid the stuff in there about not voting for Trump, or at least it seemed to me like he was suggesting people do that. Truly Thankful says he slid that in there along with what was going on. And yes, you heard correctly. In a nutshell, that's what he was saying. Donna Bede says it's the Hatch Act. What is that? I gotta remember that. Maybe I can find out something about that. I found one article that says it limits political federal employees, political activity by federal employees while on the job. But I don't know. I'll have to look it up after. The Hatch Act for federal employees. We're going to watch Biden's speech again in 1 second. The Hatch Act says, this is from osc.gov. Under the Hatch Act, federal employees in the following agencies, divisions, and partitions are further restricted under the Hatch Act and cannot take an active part in political management or political campaigns, but that's not really... A covered employee may not be a candidate, may not use his or her official authority to influence or interfere with the result of an election. Again, I'm not sure. I got to look all this up. I don't know. Let me take some more comments. In about 2 minutes, we'll watch it again. What did you think of what Biden said? It's also very interesting that let's not forget, you have a president coming out there and being very critical of the Supreme Court, not just this ruling, but a number of rulings. GMFOs said he did say it's up to the people, didn't technically try to persuade either way technically. I mean, that's why I was saying I got to listen to the wording again. It sounded to me like he was suggesting people vote against Donald Trump and for him, but maybe he didn't explicitly say it. That's not a lot of what he said. Oh, sorry. I gotta fix the lower third. Sorry, my bad. Thanks for letting me know. Let me fix real quick. I'm just gonna fix the lower third here. And I'll take out the live because it's not live anymore. But we're going to play that again. Biden criticizes SCOTUS immunity ruling. Okay. Hey, thanks to Sean TV. Sean TV says Biden is raising a red flag about this issue like he did before Russia invaded Ukraine. He said it is up to American people. He didn't tell us who to vote for. I gotta listen again. Maybe he didn't specifically say. It kind of seemed to me he was implying who you should vote for. Again, that's not all of what he said. I just think it's an interesting issue. Hey, thanks so much, Sean TV. I appreciate that. Thank you, Regular Joe. Regular Joe thinks, in my honest, humble opinion, Democrats were robbed of a choice by not having primaries. Thank you, Rita. Rita says previous administration previously had RNC convention at the White House. DJT accepted a nomination at the White House. It has been a bad domino effect for a while. Thank you, Blue Spider and Roddy Mon, Hard Rocker Guy, Grevin Share. All right, let's watch this again. Let's watch this again. Let's watch what he said again. So I'm going to replay this right now. Just a few minutes long. President Biden speaking on the Supreme Court's ruling today about presidential immunity, about what things a president can do in office and be immune from ever getting charged with a crime for after he or she is president. And they said that a president has absolute immunity for doing official acts when those acts involve the core functions of the presidency, if I'm getting this right. And then they said while doing other official acts not involving the core functions of the presidency, the president has presumed immunity, not absolute immunity, and then the president does not have immunity for private acts. There's also this whole other aspect of this, which I really didn't talk about, which is an important part of the ruling, which is something like if you're going to prosecute a president for stuff they did in office, you can't use any of the official acts as evidence in your prosecution, which could make it harder to prosecute things they do that they don't have immunity for, because it lessens, it might prevent you from using something that's really good evidence in the trial against the former president. I know that's hard to understand and it's complex and everything, but that is a whole other aspect of this ruling. All right, let's listen to this again. Here is President Biden speaking on this Supreme Court ruling. Hang on one moment. Right now, here it is. I'm going to put, it's not live them anymore, it's a replay. Replay the White House. Here we go. Oops.
Good evening. The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor, sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the President once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, that defined the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute, and that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. And may God protect our troops.
So what was that line he said? He said that for all practical purposes, there's no limits, now no legal limits on a president's behavior, I believe he said. So that's what he thinks this ruling means. And some people who are not in favor of this ruling, like the 3 dissenting justices in the Supreme Court, they would agree with that, I think, in general. But not everybody does. Yeah, he said, for all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are almost no limits on what a president can do. Okay, so what did you guys think about President Biden, his remarks? Give me a shout. I'm going to check some comments from you guys. Dadgone Gamer says, I'm surprised we haven't heard from Trump today. You mean in person? Trump did post about this. He said it was like a victory for the Constitution or something. I'll show you what he posted on Truth Social about this ruling. Gigi says it was a fair speech. He said a few things about it. He said, on Truth Social, he said, big win for our Constitution and democracy, proud to be an American. Trump also said The Supreme Court decision is a much more powerful one than some had expected it to be. It is brilliantly written and wise, and clears the stench from the Biden trials and hoaxes, all of them, that have been used as an unfair attack on crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, me. Many of these fake cases will now disappear or wither into obscurity. God bless America. So that's a couple things he said about it. Yeah, I'll post a link to the ruling again. As I said, it's not. I don't know. And I feel like there's legal discussion about how much power this gives a president to basically do whatever they want. I've heard some different legal experts saying different things. I've certainly heard concern that this could allow a president to do all kinds of terrible things that would normally be considered crimes in office, and then not have immunity from prosecution for them. But I don't know for sure that's the case. I just don't know. And it's not clear cut. This is something that's being debated today. Let's see here. The New York Times says the decision today amounted to a powerful statement by the court's conservative majority that presidents should be insulated from the potential that actions they take in carrying out their official duties could later be used by political enemies to charge them with crimes. Now, the idea of having some immunity, I think it's helpful to think about this. So, like, if, presidents have to make all kinds of decisions and that they think are in the best interest of the country, like whether to go to war or whether to take, certain measures to fight a pandemic. There's all kinds of important decisions presidents take. And so the idea is you wouldn't want a president to be out of office and then the next president to start charging them with crimes just because they carried out certain policies in office that, like, the next administration didn't like. Like, that's not something you'd want to happen. But the concern of the justices that objected today was not about that kind of thing. It was about something like, what if a president does something in their own interest, in their own personal interests, but they kind of pretend it's an official action? Can they just now, because it was an official action they did with their presidential powers, can they just not be charged for it? So, as an example, we said this before, but you have this one from Justice Sotomayor in the dissent today. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Order the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune. Immune, immune, immune. Now, is that really what this ruling means? I don't know if that's what it means. And from what I understand, there's some debate about this. But that's a worry, is that it would allow presidents to do things for their own personal gain, and for their political benefit, for their financial benefit, whatever. And just because they're president and they maybe make it look like official business, we can't prosecute them for it. That would be the worry. What about impeachment? So impeachment is another thing that can be done to presidents. But first of all, so what's impeachment going to do if the person isn't president anymore? Right? So this is about what former presidents can be charged with. If somebody's not president anymore, then impeachment is throwing them out of office. Although, I guess when you impeach somebody, can't you also prevent them from running for office again? Wasn't there also this question about whether you can impeach a former president? Anyway, my point is, the big threat of impeachment is throwing somebody out of office. But if somebody's no longer in office, then they might not care about being impeached. Also, that is a remedy for certain actions, but it's not going to affect a former president. But also, someone might just argue, well, if somebody's breaking the law, shouldn't they, a president shouldn't be above the law. So, it's this, what the concern of the majority is not wanting the president to be constantly worried when they're acting, oh my gosh, am I going to get charged by a future administration for doing this? So if you read the ruling, they talk about this. Where is it here? Is it in this intro here? I think it's in the intro here. Let me see if I can find the specific place, because I know I read some parts of the ruling where it talked about this. Let's see here. Yes, so the court concludes today that the separation of powers principle explicated in the court's precedent necessitate at least a presumptive immunity from criminal prosecution for a president's acts within the outer perimeter of his official responsibility. Such an immunity is required to safeguard the independence and effective functioning of the executive branch and to enable the president to carry out his constitutional duties without undue caution. At a minimum, the president must be immune from prosecution for an official act unless the government can show that applying the criminal prohibition to the act would pose no dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch. So something the majority in this ruling is worried about is that the president would feel restrained if they were constantly worried about getting charged with crimes by future administrations for things they did in their official capacity. Now, one of the dissents said something like, well, presidents have managed to be presidents so far without worrying about that. And then, but I'm just pointing out that is something that the majority is concerned with here. Anyways, if you want to read the ruling, I'll post the ruling as well. But the dissent believes that the majority has just gone way overboard in giving presidents latitude to do things and be free from prosecution. By the way, quick thanks to Deb N. Deb N says, my biggest concern is that some president will misuse the power. Thank you also, Joseph Fiorentino. I appreciate it, Joseph. Thank you for your support. Also, a quick thanks for your support. Jeff Parker, thanks for your support on Patreon so much. Thank you so much, Jeff Parker. And also, Kristen Gates, thanks for your support. I want to take some of your comments on the year. What did you think about what President Biden had to say tonight? At Lookner on X. You can reach me here on the year. Oops. What did you think about what President... Sorry, you heard two of me. You're hearing two of me. Lookner on X. Let me mute that. Let's see here. Oh, really quick, let me thank our moderators. Ruth Krafasi, K Body. Linda Belk, Larry, Bastion Girl, David Green, 46, Good Luck Duck, LB Prairie Dawn, I Got That Fire, Sarah, Papa Bear, Surly Dev, and all of our Facebook mods too, Bud Green, Margaret Riley. Thanks to all of our mods. Mushroom Soup thinks it was a campaign speech. So not all of it was, I don't know that all of it was campaigny. I will say, the parts where he was saying the American people need to decide if they want Trump for another 4 years, that was not just neutral language. That was listing all of these things of these dangers that Trump presented and saying the American people have to decide if they want this for another 4 years. That's basically saying vote for me. It's not literally saying it, but when I listened to it a second time, it was like he's suggesting people vote for him over Trump. That was my take on it. Let's see. It is striking, though. Let's not lose sight of this, though. That we have, this is where we're at now in the country. We have the president coming out and addressing the country and being critical of the Supreme Court and not just of one decision. Talks about them eroding, what did he say, eroding rights? But he talked about more than one decision. Expressed general dissatisfaction with how the Supreme Court has been ruling. And, you know, in theory, it's better if you don't have that kind of infighting going on because you don't want one branch to undermine the other branch. I'm not telling you what to think about him doing it. I'm sure some of you agree with what he says. My point is, it's not a great place for the country, I don't think, if you have the branches, if we're in a place where branches feel like they have to undermine each other. And again, it happens with different branches in different situations. I'm not singling out this one case of it, but I do want to point out what's going on. Betzalel says it's a divided house. Angel Eye says the Supreme Court is on the ballot. Pixel Routine thinks the country is toast. Sharking Lee thinks it's not a great place when the Supreme Court is undermining the democratic values our nation was founded on. Gino Minor says what he said is minor compared to what Trump has said against the government. Oops, let me go back to that ruling there. Hang on one moment here. Did he call for people to dissent? No, he didn't call for people to protest these a day. Thanks, these a day. What he did say is, you know, he believes that this ruling basically allows presidents to do whatever they want in office without being able to be criminally charged for it afterwards. And so now it's up to the president themselves to hold themselves back because the justice system won't. That's the kind of worry he was expressing. just to show you a little bit of the ruling here, it says this case, the case that Trump is the charges against Trump for the 2020 election, for trying to subvert the 2020 election, is the first criminal prosecution in our nation's history of a former president for actions taken during his presidency. It says, determining whether and under what circumstances such a prosecution may proceed requires careful assessment of the scope of presidential power under the Constitution. The nature of that power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office, at least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers. This immunity must be absolute. As for his remaining official actions, he is entitled to at least presumptive immunity. So given that they ruled that, there's this whole question of, okay, so of the behavior that he is charged for, which of that is his core powers and which of it is official but not core powers? So for example, something that Politico said in their article about this today was hold on a second, it says, the Supreme Court's opinion leaves significant ambiguity about the scope of Trump's immunity for acts related to his office, but outside the powers of the office specifically accorded to the president under the Constitution. The High Court's majority said those sorts of acts may be immune, but didn't definitively resolve that question. That nuance leaves open, for example, the question of whether Trump's interactions with then Vice President Mike Pence in the lead up to January 6, 2021 count as official actions and therefore immune, or whether they can remain part of the criminal case against Trump. So it is unclear whether some of the behavior that Trump is charged for is now immune from prosecution. The ruling doesn't make it clear. And the ruling also says, as for a president's unofficial acts, there is no immunity. Although presidential immunity is required for official actions to ensure that the president's decision-making is not distorted by the threat of future litigation stemming from those actions, that concern does not support immunity from unofficial conduct. And another aspect of this ruling, real quick, I know it's complex and your brain will hurt, but they did say in this ruling, if I remember this right, that if a president is prosecuted, a former president is prosecuted for things that president did while president, official acts cannot be used as evidence in that prosecution. So some people are concerned that not allowing official actions to be used as evidence will make it hard to prosecute former presidents for unofficial acts. And I know that kind of can make your head explode. But I'll see if I can find a little summary of that part of the ruling. Let's see here. But it's a whole complex legal thing. Anyways, I don't have a brief summary of it right here. Let me check one other thing see if I can find it. I want to take some more comments from you guys. Let's see here. Yeah, and actually, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who sided with the majority, did object to the majority deciding to bar prosecutors from presenting immunized official acts as trial evidence. See if I can show you that, what Justice Barrett wrote, a little bit of that. But that's a whole other part of this ruling. Let's see here. I really wish they would do a table of contents. Justice Thomas. Fine. Justice Barrett. Blah. Yeah, she says, I do not join Part 3C of the majority opinion, which holds that the Constitution limits the introduction of protected conduct as evidence in a criminal prosecution of a president beyond the limits afforded by executive privilege. I disagree with that holding. The Constitution does not require blinding juries to the circumstances surrounding conduct for which presidents can be held liable. Anyways, I know it's like complex language, but I just want to let you know that one important part of this ruling is saying that you can't use official acts which a president has immunity for. You can't use anything a president did officially as evidence to charge a president to charge a former president for something they didn't have immunity for. And there are people out there who think that that's going to really hurt the ability to charge a president for stuff that they're not immune, that they don't have immunity for. And it'll make it practically impossible to charge them for the things they don't have immunity for, regardless of whether they actually have immunity for them. But what are considered official acts? That's a whole. Official versus private. That's going to be a whole. I think that's a whole point of debate. And there's going to be a question over whether some of the actions that President Trump has been charged for are official or not, or whether they're not official. And also there's the official and core responsibilities, and the official but not core responsibility. There's all that. I'm not an expert on all that stuff. Okay. So there's a lot of interesting questions. One of our viewers said, was Watergate an official act? Which was just me says. Yeah, so I don't know how could Nixon have not been charged? I believe that Nixon thought he was going to get charged with stuff. And then Ford pardoned Nixon after Nixon resigned. But the stuff Nixon was doing with Watergate, is that stuff that if Nixon were in office now and he saw this ruling, he'd be like, oh, I can't get prosecuted for that stuff? I just don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea how this ruling would affect possible prosecution of Nixon for stuff he did in office. Thank you, Blue Spider, for your support, and Chemo Sabi. And Sean TV. Sean says, Sean thinks this would make Watergate legal. Thanks, Sean, for your support. Also, Blue Spider says, so every norm that we've grown up with for the last 55 years has been a mirage, not true? So HuffPost, which is a left-leaning publication, they have an article today saying Former President Richard Nixon's counsel John Dean said today that the Supreme Court's decision today that Trump has full immunity for official actions he took as president would have meant that Nixon was immune from his criminal conduct during the Watergate scandal that led to his resignation. I don't know if that's true. I'm not a legal expert. John Dean said he thinks virtually all of Nixon's Watergate-related conduct and virtually all the evidence falls in what could easily be described as official conduct. Again, I'm not a legal expert, so I'm not going to weigh in on this. That's an article in HuffPost. You can check out HuffPost today if you want to read that. Maybe some other legal scholar would say, no, that's wrong. It's hard with these legal cases because, these are very involved legal rulings and they leave some things undetermined. And I've seen legal scholars and legal experts disagree today about what exact leeway this gives a president to do things and not get charged for them. I'm not a legal expert. So how do I know? It's hard to really... There's certainly a lot of smart people and legal experts, including some of the justices, who say, oh, this is going to allow the president to do all kinds of things and act like a king in a lot of ways. But others say that's not true. Jason says, Jason originally wrote to me and said, I don't think that was a campaign speech Biden gave. But then he wrote again and said, okay, so mentioning Trump by name might be a bit sticky. But he's immune now, so. Yeah, and I believe, so maybe people were talking about the Hatch Act, something I was mentioning before, not that it'll be enforced, but I believe that you're not supposed to, in your official, like when you're at the White House, give campaign speeches. Although I know, because President Trump, I think as Rita said, didn't he have was there a campaign event he held there? We might have even covered it. I don't know. But so I just remember this being talked about during Trump's time. But what I was saying is I was a little surprised to see him in this speech tonight. Part of it seemed to me like a campaign speech because it seemed to me he was kind of telling people to vote for him and not for Trump. But regardless of whether it's a Hatch Act violation, whether it's illegal, I hope you can maybe understand whether or not you agree with it, what the argument would be. The argument would be something for it being inappropriate. The argument would be something like, look, when you're acting as president, and you're speaking from the White House and you're speaking to the entire country and you're acting as a representative of the entire country, and you're using this public White House building, and you're doing a presidential address, just keep that about being president and running the country, and keep the politics and vote for me and not the other side out of it. That would be the idea. That's not just for Biden. That'd be for anybody in the White House who works in the White House. So that would be the general idea. You might not agree with it. So my ears kind of perked up when I heard him give that part of the speech tonight. Cindy J says this didn't help Trump today, it just delayed it more. So practically speaking, not that it was going to happen before the election anyway, but this will definitely push the trial that was originally going to happen, I want to say maybe in March, but the trial for the 2020 election stuff is going to, if it ever is held, it's going to be held after the election. And again, if Trump wins, he can tell the Justice Department just to not pursue it, and maybe he can try pardoning himself and making it completely go away. Shockingly thinks this is a dangerous ruling because criminals can argue with legal ease and use court tactics in an attempt to legalize what should not be allowed. And some of the things to think about here, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, but these are the kind of things I think about. Like, you know, you're a president and you issue some executive order that this person can't run for office because they're a national security risk or something. And you're really doing it because, like, you don't like them or something, or for your own personal benefit. But you make it look like an official act. And now it's an official act. So you have in theory, you have immunity for it, or presumptive immunity. So you can imagine, you know, I think you can imagine situations where a president wants to do something just for their own gain, but they decide to do it and make it look like an official act. And so is that it? Is that you can just do whatever you want as long as you make it look like an official act? Storm Laughter says Joe Biden has been doing all of these things. Would you like to get specific? So if Storm Laughter, if you're talking about the Trump thing he always says, that Biden has charged him with all these things, Trump has never presented any piece of evidence to support his claim that all of these charges were brought by Biden himself. The state charges are brought by other states, and the 2020 election case was brought by a special prosecutor who was chosen by the Justice Department. So, I mean, I guess you could say something, you could always just believe something happened in a back room somewhere. But just to be clear, Donald Trump has never presented any evidence to back up his claim that any of the charges against him were actually made by Biden. He says they were all the time. He calls them Biden charges and says Biden, Biden, Biden. But this isn't having a bias. This is just a fact. He's never presented any evidence to support this. Just to be clear. Thank you, Jonathan Riley. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jonathan, and Katya T, for your support. Joe, our viewer, thinks the ruling does not get Trump out of trouble. What he is being prosecuted for aren't official presidential acts, so there's no way they can be construed as such, and lower courts will determine that. This just pushes things back. So, to be clear, some of the things, I believe the Supreme Court did say today that some of the things he has been charged with are official acts. And it's going to go back to lower courts whether other ones are. Although those rulings could be appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, just to be clear. But yeah, so as an example, in terms of his specific case today, again, I'm not familiar with the whole ruling and everything. I'm not going to read through the whole thing right now. But, and thank you, Joe, for writing in. But, yeah, I mean, the headline on Politico is Trump is immune for prosecution for some acts in federal election case. So part of what the ruling says is that some of the conduct he's been charged with, he's definitely immune from. But other of it, it's not clear. And some of it is, I believe some of it is agreed on that it's private. So he would, so that he would not be immune from it. Although, something else I heard is that even behavior that he could still be not immune from, it might be much harder for the prosecution to prosecute him for this now, because part of this ruling today that said that you can't use a president's official acts as evidence to prosecute them for stuff they don't have immunity for. One thing Politico said is the Supreme Court's opinion leaves significant ambiguity about the scope of Trump's immunity for acts related to his office, but outside the powers specifically accorded to the president under the Constitution. The High Court's majority said those sorts of acts may be immune, but didn't definitively resolve that question. Let's see here. Do you guys want to see one more time? It's just a few minutes long. Do you want to see one more time what President Biden said about this? I can play that one more time. I have a yes and a no. I have a few yeses. It's like 4 minutes long. I think it's about 5 minutes long. We'll play it one more time. HTFO says, I'm confused what presumptive immunity means. So it's not absolute immunity, but it means that there's some sort of bar you have to meet to show that they don't have immunity. I don't know what that bar is, but it means you have to do more to show they don't have immunity. But I don't know the specifics. I'm sorry I can't give you better answers on these legal questions. I'm not even trying. The legal stuff is tough. So if you can leave this stream with a general idea of what the case is about and kind of a direction if you want to read more on it, then I'm okay. That's all I'm trying to do, is give people a general sense of what this is about, because it's hard stuff and it's complex. And I don't have the ability to give you more than that. And I'm not trying to. Let's show this one more time. This is a replay of what President Biden said about this ruling. He was not going to speak about this. Well, it was not planned. It came out around like 6 p.m. or something, that it was suddenly put on the schedule to have him speak. So it's not like all day the White House was saying he was going to speak about this. All right, here we go. Let's listen to it again. Here's a replay from before.
Good evening. The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that tests your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, that defined the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute, and that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. And may God protect our troops.
All right, so there was President Biden. His voice was not hoarse tonight, by the way. All right, we'll take a few more comments here. You can give me a shout at Lookner. Now, Baby Dougie thinks that none of what the Supreme Court wrote allows anything that Sotomayor said. I honestly don't know. So the examples that she gave, I kind of wish there were more examples. I like when they do specific examples in these rulings so I can see what they're talking about. But examples that Justice Sotomayor gave in her dissent, she claimed that the ruling today, and this was signed also by Jackson and Kagan, she claimed that the ruling she said, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. This new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way, under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune. Immune, immune, immune. Now, is that true? I don't know. Is that true? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And something else that she said in her dissent, she believes that this immunity is not in the Constitution. And a bunch of her dissent is arguing that the Constitution does not give the president this immunity that the majority says it does. And so she spends a bunch of time. I'll post a link to the file with the ruling and the dissent and other opinions by different justices. She also says today's rulings means the president wields the enormous power of his office. She says today's ruling means that whenever the president wields the enormous power of his office, the majority says the criminal law, at least presumptively, cannot touch him. Yeah, she thinks this official acts immunity has no firm grounding in constitutional text, history, or precedent, and she argues about that. Anyways, if you want to read the majority's reasoning and the dissent, I will post a link again. And you can read it and read their details of their arguments. Nick P. thinks, yeah, man, it's true. From now on, anything a sitting president deems official is immune. Like, is that true? Like, can a president walk down the street and walk into the bank and say, as a president, I am doing this as an official act. I am robbing this bank. Now, I don't know if that would be allowed, just by saying it's official. But if you said, I robbed the bank because I was trying to do something like that a president would do, like keep the country safe or something, I don't know. There's scenarios people might come up with, and I don't know how they would, how this would apply. I have no idea. Again, I'm not a legal scholar. El Deuterino thinks that specific dissent by the president to a Supreme Court ruling is fine, but a president saying the courts are generally bad is not cool, in my opinion. So he did say that the Supreme Court has had a series of rulings where they've gotten rid of legal precedents, things that were widely accepted. And he said voting rights and civil rights and right to choose, and also presidents being subject to the law. So he was more generally critical in his speech than just specifically critical about this ruling. Kislider says this ruling only makes the impeachment powers of Congress the last resort. Yeah, but how does impeachment affect? What if a president does something and nobody finds out about it till after they're president? First of all, that's one scenario. So you're going to impeach the person after they're president? You're not going to throw them out of office. They're already out of office. Now, something else someone might say, I think I heard somebody say this today, is, well, there's still the voters. The voters could vote to keep somebody out of office. But again, it's like impeachment. If somebody's already been in office and they're out of office, and they're a former president, I guess with impeachment, I think you can say somebody can't hold office again if they're impeached. But if somebody doesn't want to run again, then there's really nothing the impeachment can do to them. I don't even know if you can impeach somebody after they've been in office. I don't know how that works. Andre says you can be impeached out of office if the charges are brought while you were in office. Yeah, so there's a CRS, Congressional Research Service article here from 2021 talking about the question of whether the Senate can try a former president for conduct that occurred while he was in office. The Constitution does not directly address whether Congress may impeach and try a former president for actions taken while in office. Though the text is open to debate, it appears most scholars who have closely examined the question have concluded Congress does have authority to extend the impeachment process to officials who are no longer in office. Anyways, if you want to read this, go to Congressional Research Service. Thanks to Crazy Yoda for your support. Crazy Yoda says, guess who is very glad this immunity stays? Obama, Biden, Bush. Well, according to the dissent today, according to the dissent, past presidents didn't think they had this immunity. That they assumed that they did not assume they had this immunity. So you're saying this immunity stays, Crazy Yoda, but according to the dissent, this is not something that past presidents would have even assumed they had, this level of immunity. Thank you, Crazy Yoda, for your support. And indeed, well, I don't want to get into Nixon because I don't know the details about all that. All right. Let me just make sure I didn't miss some more messages here. Chaz Martin says, I find it interesting how Biden said that we need to worry about Trump doing something criminal in office, but not mentioning how this could affect Biden or any other future presidents. It seems like Biden is saying, you can trust me, I swear I'll never do something like that. He actually did. He specifically said it's now up to the individuals to restrain themselves because there won't be, from doing various things, because they'll be immune from criminal prosecution for them. So he did say something like that. Thanks, Chaz, for writing in. And look, a ruling like this, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road or more, some president does something, and the question comes up of can they be prosecuted for it? And then this is the ruling they bring up to try to figure that out. So this will impact, could impact possible prosecutions of future presidents. Jay from the Lake thinks that the part of the speech that part of Biden's remarks tonight were a clear violation of the Hatch Act. You don't address the nation for a speech against a political opponent and to undermine a Supreme Court decision. Act in itself undermines the rule of law. Well, so speaking out against the Supreme Court, I don't know that counts as political activity, the way that going out there and saying vote for, like, if you went out there and said vote for me, not for my campaign, not for my opponent would be. So again, because he's not running against the Supreme Court for anything, and they're not running for anything. So I think the Hatch Act has something to do with doing things in an official capacity, carrying out political behavior. Yeah, Wikipedia says the Hatch Act prohibits civil service employees in the executive branch of the federal government, except the president and vice president, from engaging in some forms of political activity. Does the Hatch Act not apply to the president? Is that what it is? Maybe that's what it is. Okay. I believe they're not. Yeah, I mean, Wikipedia talks about the president and the vice president not being covered by the Hatch Act. Anyways, so, you know, my point, it wasn't just the Hatch Act, though. My point, I don't want to keep talking about this, but when I brought up Biden saying something kind of campaigny during his address tonight, my point was some people think it's inappropriate for a president to, when they're talking at the White House, doing official business, to be saying something campaigny. And they might say, you know, keep that for your rallies outside the White House. So that wasn't, I wasn't originally talking about whether it was illegal. I was just talking about the appropriateness of this. And I wasn't just talking about Biden. I was saying for any president. So I found it interesting that he did, at least in some of the speech, there was a section there where he seemed to be saying, not explicitly, but implicitly, vote for me, not for this other person. Thank you, MetaGuide, for your support. MetaGuide thinks no truth was told in that speech. Chris C. says the Hatch Act doesn't apply to president. This was confirmed under Trump when he did politics from the White House podium. Softball Paul said Trump used the White House as a backdrop for the 2020 Republican convention. Tina thinks when Biden used the word "I dissent" today, said the words "I dissent," that could be interpreted as a call to violence against political opponents similar to the I Resist movement. Cheryl Simpson says dissent means simply the right to disagree, does not mean violence. Derailed Freight Train says, unfortunately, this seems like a big deal, even if in the end it doesn't amount to much. This is going to reframe things for some folks for sure. And as I said, it could maybe somewhere down the road, some president does something and it becomes a huge deal for that. All right, I think in a moment, we might wrap this up in a moment. I want to check one more thing here. And I would encourage you guys, so again, I'm not a legal expert. There's a lot of different legal experts out there with takes on this. So you can find articles and analysis. So I would encourage you to read more about it. Read the ruling. Read if you want, or skim through the ruling and skim through the ruling and the dissent and the opinions attached, and I'll post a link to that again as well in the chat. You can find it on the Supreme Court website under rulings. The opinion and dissent. I'm posting it in the chat right now. It's a very interesting topic. All right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you for joining for this broadcast where we covered President Biden speaking at the White House about the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling today. I'm sorry, I am not more of a legal expert, but hopefully I provided a fairly accurate general overview, which gives you a basic idea of what the case is about. That was my goal. So I apologize for any inaccuracies. I did the best I could. But I appreciate you joining, and I appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts on the matter and your comments. And we will bring you more live updates and breaking news as it happens. I would have been on earlier today probably covering this, but I had to get the internet fixed in here. But the internet's fixed now. So we're back. So I really appreciate you guys coming to the stream. And subscribe, follow Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda. Agenda Free TV. And sign up for the free notifications. We have a notification system. You know, news happens at any time. I don't know in advance when big news is going to happen. So if you want to find out when we're going live, make sure you sign up for our free notification system. It's free. We do it through Discord. You sign up, you get a notification sent to you every time we go live. The mods will post a link to the notifications in the chat. You can also find the notification link in the description of this video on YouTube and Facebook. And a huge thank you for our moderators, for being here. A lot of people in the chat, unsurprisingly tonight, and thanks to our moderators for keeping it all civil and respectful. I love that we have chat rooms where people of different political persuasions can exchange views, but do it civilly and respectfully. And that's why the mods are there. So thank you, mods. By the way, AKA Big Worm says you need 2 or 3 internet lines with a big show like yours. Hey, I'll make you a deal, AKA Big Worm. If you will pay for me to install a completely different second internet line in here, I will do it. I promise you. That's my deal. I make that offer to you. Okay, thanks to RJ, our moderator, K-Body, Linda Belk and Larry over there on X, all the other YouTube moderators who've been there. And Dr. McRib says that sounds like a fair offer. Margaret Riley over there on Facebook. Bud Green was there, I know, modding. Thank you. Facebook still hasn't fixed the stars I see. Just wonderful. On Twitch, Bastion Girl, Big Ball of Yarn, I got that fire. Sarah, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. Thanks for modding over there. All of our, and everybody else who is modding. Oh, by the way, on Twitch, thanks to Brass Monkey for subscribing, JT88 Clay 54 for subscribing, Softball Paul for subscribing, Hoss McKayfabe for the bits, Ruler of Oz for subscribing, Congler for gigantifying an emote, the Sugar-O for subscribing on Twitch, thank you. Airtight Ski Pole for your support on Twitch. Oh, I'm so behind on the Twitch support for thank yous. I'm behind on the Twitch thank yous. Barker J. Roar, thanks on Twitch. I'm sorry, Twitch. Man. Gonzalez, thank you. Cubat, thank you. Emilian, thank you. Thanks for your support on Twitch. I'm so sorry. I missed the Twitch support. I was late on the thank yous. My bad. Hey, and thanks to everybody who donated to the stream, donated to the channel. That is really nice of you. You are the ones who keep this channel going. It is a viewer-supported channel, so thank you so much for your support. If you ever would like to donate, you go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv, but big thanks to you. And let's see here. Thank you to our mods, and thanks to our Discord mods, by the way, too. And if you're interested, we have a Discord chat where you can chat with other viewers when we're not on the air. And if you want to check it, that's free. And if you want to check that out, it's the same link as the notifications link. You can check out the Discord chat there. A quick heads up, if you're subscribing on Facebook and you want to get the Facebook notifications, you got to do this weird thing where you click the notifications bell so it's ringing like that and choose all notifications. I know that sounds weird, but that's how you get the notifications on YouTube. Also, a quick reminder, I do have another channel where I sometimes do non-news live streams, my personal channel. That is Lookner on YouTube and Looknerd with a D on Twitch. You can check out my personal channel for some non-news live streams. Oh, AKA Big Worm says, I will share my Wi-Fi with you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see here. I wanted to shout out our Twitch subscribers. Oh, thanks, Billy Joe Drage, for your support as well. Thanks so much, Billy Joe Drage. That's very kind of you. She says, no one is above the law. Thanks, Billy Joe. Very nice of you from Australia. Thanks to our subscribers on Twitch, Relila, JT88, Clay54, Shaggy, Wall Street. Thanks to Talk with Sky for chatting, first time chat there on Twitch. Thanks Softball Paul for subscribing. Regina George, thanks for subscribing on Twitch. Annie Cush. I Got That Fire. Thanks for subscribing over there. All of our Twitch subscribers, thanks for subscribing. Also, Oh, thanks to McBritches for posting that ruling, for pinning that post. I should have pinned the post on YouTube. Maybe next time I'll do that. But thank you for doing that. So thanks to all of our Twitch subscribers and our Facebook subscribers. Thanks for supporting over there, subscribing. Eve Richards, I think it's Jane Summers. I got to go by that. Marjorie Jones, Margaret Riley, Kay Lowry Body, and Bryant Utpatel. Thanks, Bryant, for being a subscriber over there. All of our Facebook subscribers, thank you. And I want to thank our, and Jane Summers, yes, thanks for subscribing as well. And Paul Anderson was modding too. Thanks, Paul. Thanks to our YouTube members for your support. Really appreciate our YouTube members. Elizabeth Marangobra, Cheryl Simpson, Evelyn and Maine, Buffalo Women, Kay Creeman, Sam Stamos, PZ Papa Zulu, Flor Morena, UV Lightning, Lucky Minute, Randy J, The One and Only, Dr. McRib, Cindy, Anna, Lunali Syria, Jane Jones, Carrie Collins, Jesse's Girl, Pam Turner, Ann Breedenstein, Kitty Zimmerman, J.K. Sinar. Thanks for being members over on YouTube. Boss Lulu and more. Dark Cloud, Orvis Nabir, Riri Patton, Flor Morena, Ryan the Gamer. Thank you for being members. And all of our viewers, thank you for watching. All right, guys, we are wrapping this up. I appreciate you being here for the stream. All right, guys, that is it for now. Thanks again to our mods. Thanks to all of you for joining. We have been here covering the President Biden speaking on the Supreme Court presidential immunity ruling. And I guess you could say we were covering the ruling as well. So if you missed it, feel free to rewind and watch it. That is it for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.